That's if I had one wish for Christmas, it would be to end all the censorship that's happening to independent media, and that has severely hit us in so many different ways. But thank you so much, Soul A, for the super chat. Really appreciate that. We're going to take phone calls in a little bit. But now, Jason, let's go to the first story that we want to talk about. And that story, of course, is about, let's play that video.
WikiLeaks. 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 That came out on WikiLeaks. 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 Boy, I love reading those WikiLeaks. 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 WikiLeaks, right? WikiLeaks. 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 WikiLeaks.
And apparently Donald Trump loved the WikiLeaks.
Yeah, Trump's favorite whistleblower organization that he is now going after. And by the way, that video keeps going on for a lot longer as we are finding out that now there are secret indictments, which we have been telling you about, against Julian Assange of WikiLeaks. Now, as we know, Donald Trump, when he was campaigning to be president of the United States, especially in 2016, was tweeting, was talking, was boasting about the great efforts of WikiLeaks, allowing there to be transparency within our own government. Now, that tone has definitely changed 180 degrees and has become a very troubling one, with even Eric Trump just 2 days ago being on Fox and Friends saying that, well, what's one death of a journalist have to do with us ruining our relationship with Saudi Arabia? Really showing you the testament, the kind of mentality that is coming from Trump's White House. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the legacy mainstream media is just being as asinine and as a total lack of principles, have been making a big case about Jim Acosta this week, which of course is a CNN news reporter who is at the White House, who's arguing that he has a First Amendment right to be at the White House. This is after, of course, he grabbed onto the microphone and decided not to relinquish it, becoming more of a kind of activist entertainment, which the mainstream legacy media rallied behind. Meanwhile, we find out that Julian Assange, the man who revealed one of the biggest CIA leaks in history, the man who is banned from even having speech, banned from sunlight, banned from medical care and family, violation of human rights under 2 UN rulings, him? No. We're just going to report on what's happening to him and not fight for him like the mainstream media has been fighting for Jim Acosta, which shows you the direct parallels that need to be highlighted here about this very important story that is happening, since the Washington Post this week confirmed that the Department of Justice has filed secret charges against Julian Assange. And we found out about this because of supposed accidental reveal by prosecutors from a copy and paste error. Now, this story and this aspect of this story is important to critically think about, because this copy and paste error by this prosecutor was done twice with documents that are usually ironclad and have many people look over them. And to me, if you look at the bigger story here, this really wasn't an accident. This was done on purpose, and many people could speculate why, but it's clear to me that this was not just something that happened, that the United States government, that this prosecutor, that the people behind this weren't aware of. It's very unlikely that this is the scenario behind this bigger case, which, by the way, if you've been watching this YouTube channel, months ago, we've been telling you that, yes, there are secret sealed indictments against Julian Assange. You could go back on our broadcast. You could go back on our Sunday live shows. You could go back every time we talked about Julian Assange. We always brought up the fact that there were secret indictments against him. And guess what? Now, Washington Post is reporting on it. Now it's very clear. And Julian Assange has already been detained for now over nearly 6 years and has been punished for releasing and publishing information. And there has been a lot of disinformation because of him being a publisher of documents that are critical of the power establishment. And even right now, we are seeing propaganda out there that along with this secret indictment, that there's some kind of correlation that Julian Assange was, quote, acting in the direction of Russia, which there's absolutely no evidence of. There's a lot of disinformation that happened around Julian Assange even years ago when everyone was calling him a rapist, even though those charges were completely dropped against him. And the disinformation campaign continues with, of course, the rallying to save the First Amendment for Jim Acosta being an activist entertainer, but totally disregarding the very important ramifications of this case with Julian Assange, who looks like he will be charged under the Espionage Act, which again could be used against anyone, including mainstream media reporters. And this is happening because Trump's Secretary of State, the former CIA director, Mike Pompeo, was the person who launched this investigation into Assange shortly after taking the job of course, Secretary of State, which Donald Trump appointed him to. And with former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, they were the ones who reconsidered the decisions by Barack Obama not to go after WikiLeaks and decided to aggressively probe Assange and his alleged ties to the Russian government. And if you really look at the situation, there's no hiding it that this is all squarely on Donald Trump, the big promoter and supporter of WikiLeaks when he was running to be president, and now the persecutor of them. And it's not only just the Trump administration's 180-degree flip-flop on this issue going after WikiLeaks within Trump's administration, but it's also the liberals, the Democrats, who are actually supporting Trump's administration trying to destroy WikiLeaks because, again, they're just hypocritical, non-virtuous people who are still mad at Julian Assange and WikiLeaks because of the documents that he released against the DNC, exposing the corruption of course, the highest levels of the Democratic establishment, including Hillary Clinton. And this is why he is being put as a target for exposing the DNC establishment and also U.S. war crimes that were committed in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and also by the intelligence agency, the CIA. Now, the bigger question that we have to be left with here is, what charges is he being charged with? And of course, that is still not known. No one really knows what he's going to be charged for. But ultimately, if you look at the situation and you back up and you look at this from a bigger perspective, ultimately what WikiLeaks and Julian Assange represents is a reporter, is a publisher. It's an organization that releases information that they were given. Ultimately being journalists, ultimately doing what major media companies used to do and publish documents and publish secrets that the government never wanted you to know. That's what journalism was. That's what Watergate was. That's what muckraking was. And if the White House, if Donald Trump and his administration is successful in bringing him down for publishing, this will have large ramifications with, of course, other reporters, other mainstream media companies, and also, if you look at it, should also have something to do with going after Hillary Clinton for mishandling classified information, since this is the overall trend that the United States government is trying to go after Julian Assange. So even Obama's Department of Justice concluded that persecuting Julian Assange is a grave threat for press freedom. Even the New York Times was able to admit that. One of the few organizations who are actually putting things together, putting a correlation to them, and saying the prosecution of Julian Assange would be a very, very bad precedent for publishers, since essentially what Julian Assange does and has been doing is what the New York Times did before, is what the Washington Post does before. You look at a lot of the news articles that are published, especially against Donald Trump, they're coming from inside sources. They're coming from people within the White House leaking information to the press. And that could be made criminal. So the only people really standing up for Julian Assange right now are a very, very few Trump supporters, press freedom organizations, the New York Times, Pamela Anderson, who even just now accused the Australian Prime Minister of being smutty, saying that he that he needs strength and conviction to actually take care of his fellow citizen Julian Assange and help bring him home, which of course he's not doing. Rand Paul has also made a stand in the ground calling for immunity for Julian Assange in exchange for testimony regarding the works of WikiLeaks. And it's pretty much clear that that is the common sense thing to do, since any conviction has grave implications for the future of freedom of speech and the freedom of press. Of course, Julian Assange's lawyers are going to be fighting the charges very closely, and a lot of people are drawing a red line saying, if Trump does this, this is no way that I will ever support him in 2020. Even a lot of a small but significant number of the people who supported him initially. But if you look at the story overall, it pretty much shows us how the empire is proving everything right about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And it's an absolutely terrifying discovery and notification to know that soon this man may be not just rotting in Ecuadorian embassy, but in a U.S. jail for doing the job that needs to be done to hold government accountable.